In the summer of 1976, New York City was already struggling with rising crime, blackouts, and fear. But a new kind of terror began to take hold, one that struck suddenly, silently, and without warning. Young couples sitting in parked cars, women walking late at night. A single gunshot, then another. The killer would vanish into the darkness. His name, the public would soon learn, was David Richard Berkowitz, but to New York City, he became known as Son of Sam. Between July 1976 and July 1977, Berkowitz carried out a series of random shootings across the Bronx, Queens, and Brooklyn, killing 6 people and wounding 7 others. His weapon of choice was a .44 caliber Bulldog revolver, earning him his first nickname, the .44 caliber Killer. The randomness of the attacks was what terrified the city most. There was no clear pattern, no connection between victims, no warning. People stopped sitting in cars, bars emptied early. New York lived on edge. Berkowitz was born in 1953 and adopted shortly after birth. His childhood was marked by emotional distance, isolation, and behavioral issues. After the death of his adoptive mother, Berkowitz withdrew further, developing deep resentment, loneliness, and paranoia. By his early 20s, those internal struggles had transformed into violent obsession. The first confirmed attack occurred on July 29, 1976 in the Bronx. Berkowitz shot Donna Loria, killing her instantly, and seriously wounded Jody Valenti. At first, the attack appeared random, just another shooting in a dangerous city. But it wasn't the last. Over the next year, Berkowitz struck repeatedly, often approaching couples sitting inside parked cars late at night. He would fire without warning and flee the scene before police could respond. As the body count grew, fear spread rapidly. Then came the letters. Berkowitz began sending handwritten notes to the New York Police Department and local newspapers. The letters were chaotic, threatening, and deeply disturbing, filled with misspellings, religious imagery, and violent language. In one of the most infamous lines, he signed off as Son of Sam. The name instantly captured public attention. In his letters, Berkowitz mocked police, claimed supernatural influence, and portrayed himself as an unstoppable force. He referred to himself as a servant of dark powers and warned that the killings would continue. New York's media exploded. Front pages plastered the name Son of Sam. Citizens demanded answers. Police pressure intensified. At the height of the investigation, over 100 detectives were assigned to the case. Thousands of tips flooded in. Psychologists attempted criminal profiles. Police debated whether the killer was acting alone. The city was gripped by fear. Then, in his most bizarre claim, Berkowitz told investigators that he was being commanded to kill by a demon-possessed dog belonging to his neighbor, Sam Carr. According to Berkowitz, the dog spoke to him, issuing violent orders that he felt powerless to resist. While the claim would later be dismissed as delusion or fabrication, it became one of the most infamous aspects of the case. The end came unexpectedly. On August 10, 1977, Berkowitz was arrested outside his apartment in Yonkers, New York. Police had traced a parking ticket near one of the crime scenes back to him. When confronted, Berkowitz did not resist. Instead, he calmly said, "You got me." Inside his car, officers found the .44 caliber revolver used in the shootings. The terror was over. During interrogation, Berkowitz confessed to the murders. Initially, he maintained the story of demonic influence, but later admitted he had fabricated parts of it. Psychiatrists concluded that while Berkowitz suffered from serious mental disturbances, he was legally sane. In 1978, David Berkowitz pleaded guilty to 6 counts of second-degree murder and received 6 consecutive sentences of 25 years to life in prison. He would never be eligible for full freedom. In the years following his conviction, Berkowitz's story took another turn. In prison, he claimed to have experienced a religious conversion and renounced his violent past. He has since stated that he alone was responsible for the killings and that the Son of Sam persona was a product of his psychological breakdown and desire for attention. Despite this, the case remains surrounded by controversy, speculation, and unanswered questions, including claims of possible accomplices, which law enforcement has repeatedly denied. Today, David Berkowitz remains incarcerated in New York State Prison. The Son of Sam case changed New York City forever. It altered how serial killers were covered by the media. It reshaped police profiling techniques, and it left a permanent scar on a city already struggling to survive. More than anything, it revealed how fear itself can become contagious, how a single man armed with a gun and a name can paralyze millions. David Berkowitz did not just kill 6 people. For over a year, he made an entire city afraid to sit in the dark. For decades, organized crime in New York thrived in secrecy. Bosses ruled from the shadows, avoided cameras, and rarely spoke in public. Then came John Joseph Gotti Jr. He didn't hide, he didn't whisper, and he didn't dress like a man afraid of prison. John Gotti turned the mafia into a public spectacle, and for a time, he got away with it. Born in 1940 and raised in Queens, New York, Gotti grew up in a working-class Italian-American neighborhood where loyalty, reputation, and toughness mattered more than rules. As a teenager, he dropped out of school and began running errands for the Gambino crime family, one of New York's powerful 5 families. In the 1970s, Gotti was a rising figure, violent, ambitious, and fiercely loyal to his crew. He was involved in hijackings, loan sharking, gambling, and extortion. Unlike many mobsters, Gotti preferred confrontation over caution. That trait would define his career. At the top of the Gambino family sat Paul Castellano, a traditional mafia boss who favored white-collar crime and avoided unnecessary violence. Castellano saw Gotti as reckless. Gotti saw Castellano as weak. The tension came to a breaking point in 1985. On December 16, 1985, Castellano and his underboss were gunned down outside Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan, executed in broad daylight. The hit was meticulously planned and unmistakably bold. Everyone in the mafia knew who was behind it. John Gotti. Within days, Gotti took control of the Gambino family, becoming one of the most powerful crime bosses in America. But instead of operating quietly, he embraced attention. He wore custom-tailored suits. He smiled for cameras. He gave interviews outside courthouses. The media loved him. Newspapers dubbed him the Dapper Don for his expensive style, and the Teflon Don because criminal charges seemed unable to stick. Throughout the late 1980s, Gotti beat case after case: racketeering, assault, conspiracy, often thanks to intimidated or bribed jurors. To the public, he looked untouchable. To law enforcement, he was a ticking bomb. Behind the scenes, Gotti ruled with fear. Associates who disobeyed him disappeared. Suspected informants were murdered. Loyalty was enforced through violence, not trust. The FBI made him their top priority. Federal agents bugged social clubs, cars, and apartments. They followed his movements for years, patiently collecting evidence. But Gotti was careful, or so he thought. His biggest mistake wasn't the FBI. It was Sammy the Bull Gravano. Gravano was Gotti's underboss, his right-hand man, responsible for enforcing discipline and carrying out murders. He was deeply involved in the family's violence, personally admitting to 19 killings. But when prosecutors finally cornered Gravano in 1991, he made a decision that would end John Gotti's reign. He flipped. Gravano agreed to testify against Gotti in exchange for a reduced sentence. For the first time, the government had an insider, someone who could explain the mafia from the inside in detail under oath. The case was devastating. FBI recordings captured Gotti speaking freely, criticizing his own men, and unknowingly incriminating himself. Gravano's testimony painted Gotti not as a misunderstood public figure, but a ruthless crime boss responsible for murder, extortion, and racketeering. In 1992, John Gotti was convicted on all major charges, including murder and conspiracy. The sentence was final: life in prison without parole. The Teflon was gone. Gotti was sent to ADX Florence, a federal supermax prison in Colorado, one of the most secure facilities in the world. There, he spent years in near-total isolation, cut off from the power, attention, and luxury that once defined him. In prison, his health deteriorated. Diagnosed with throat cancer, Gotti's physical strength faded, but his legend did not. To some, he remained a folk hero, a symbol of defiance against authority.
To others, he was exactly what he always had been: a violent criminal who destroyed lives for power. John Gotti died in 2002 at age 61, still serving his life sentence. His legacy reshaped the American Mafia. After his conviction, mob bosses became quieter. Flashy public behavior disappeared. The era of celebrity gangsters was over. Law enforcement proved that no amount of reputation, money, or intimidation could permanently outrun federal surveillance. John Gotti didn't just fall. He marked the beginning of the end for the Mafia's golden age. In the end, the man who thrived in the spotlight was undone by voices caught in the dark, recorded, preserved, and played back to a jury that finally listened. For decades, Bernard Lawrence Madoff was not just trusted on Wall Street, he was respected. He wasn't a shadowy figure operating from the margins of finance. He wasn't an outsider chasing quick money. Bernie Madoff was the system itself. From his offices in Manhattan, Madoff ran what appeared to be one of the most successful investment operations in history. His firm promised steady, reliable returns regardless of market conditions. While other investors rode waves of boom and bust, Madoff's clients saw consistency. Too much consistency. Behind the polished image and quiet authority, Bernie Madoff was executing the largest Ponzi scheme ever discovered, defrauding thousands of investors out of an estimated $64.8 billion in paper value. The scheme would run for decades, and it would collapse almost overnight. Bernard Madoff was born in 1938 and built his career carefully. He founded Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities in 1960, starting as a legitimate brokerage firm. Over time, he became a pioneer in electronic trading and even served as chairman of NASDAQ, a position that placed him at the center of American finance. This legitimacy was his greatest weapon. Alongside his real trading business, Madoff quietly operated a fraudulent wealth management arm. Clients were told their money was invested using a sophisticated split-strike conversion strategy involving blue-chip stocks and options. In reality, no such trades were taking place. There were no profits. There were no investments. Older investors were simply being paid with money from newer ones. Classic Ponzi scheme. But unlike typical fraudsters, Madoff targeted the wealthy, powerful, and influential. His clients included hedge funds, banks, charities, celebrities, universities, and entire pension systems. Being allowed to invest with Madoff was seen as a privilege. He didn't chase investors. They begged him. The illusion held because Madoff controlled every aspect of the operation. He generated fake account statements, he restricted access, he discouraged questions, and most importantly, he delivered steady returns, even during market downturns. That alone should have raised alarms. Over the years, multiple analysts and whistleblowers raised concerns, most notably Harry Markopolos, who repeatedly warned regulators that Madoff's numbers were mathematically impossible. He submitted detailed reports to the SEC explaining exactly how the fraud worked. Nothing happened. Madoff's reputation protected him. Regulators assumed that someone so established, so respected, could not be running a scam of this magnitude. Then came 2008. The global financial crisis triggered panic across markets. Investors rushed to withdraw their money. For Madoff, this was the moment everything unraveled. He needed billions in cash. There was none. In December 2008, Madoff confessed the truth, not to authorities, but to his two sons, both of whom worked at his firm. He told his sons his investment business was one big lie and that he had been running a Ponzi scheme for years. His sons did not protect him. They reported him to federal authorities. The next day, Bernie Madoff was arrested in his Manhattan apartment. The fallout was immediate and devastating. Thousands of victims lost life savings, charities collapsed, retirement funds vanished. Some investors were wiped out entirely. The emotional toll was immense. Despair, shame, and in some cases, suicide. In 2009, Bernie Madoff pleaded guilty to 11 federal felony charges, including fraud, money laundering, perjury, and securities violations. During sentencing, victims filled the courtroom, describing ruined lives and broken futures. The judge showed no leniency. Madoff was sentenced to the maximum penalty allowed by law, 150 years in federal prison, and ordered to pay $170 billion in restitution. Madoff was sent to a high-security federal prison where his status as one of the most infamous financial criminals in history followed him. His wife, Ruth Madoff, was not charged but lost nearly everything. His family was destroyed. Tragically, the consequences continued long after the trial. In 2010, Madoff's son Mark died by suicide. Another son, Andrew, later died of cancer. The name Madoff became synonymous not just with fraud, but with irreversible damage. Bernie Madoff never denied his crimes. In prison interviews, he admitted that greed, ego, and the need to maintain appearances drove him forward year after year. He claimed the scheme was supposed to be temporary, just a way to cover early losses. It never stopped. Bernie Madoff died in prison in 2021 at the age of 82. He never walked free again. The Madoff scandal permanently changed financial regulation and exposed deep failures in oversight, accountability, and trust. It proved that fraud does not always wear a criminal face. Sometimes it wears a tailored suit, speaks calmly, and sits at the top of the system. Bernie Madoff didn't rob banks. He didn't threaten anyone.
He convinced the world he was safe. And that belief cost more money and more lives than almost any crime in modern history. In the late 1960s, Harlem was a neighborhood shaped by poverty, addiction, and quiet power struggles. The drug trade already existed, controlled by layers of middlemen who inflated prices and diluted product before it ever reached the streets. Then, Frank Lucas changed the rules. He didn't invent heroin trafficking in New York, but he industrialized it. For a brief period, Frank Lucas became one of the most powerful drug traffickers in American history, building a heroin empire that flooded Harlem and beyond while operating in plain sight. Frank Lucas was born in 1930 in North Carolina and moved to New York City as a young man. Harlem was controlled by powerful criminal organizations, including Italian Mafia families. Lucas started at the bottom, working as a driver and enforcer for Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson, Harlem's legendary numbers runner. Johnson was more than a boss, he was a mentor. From him, Lucas learned discipline, patience, and the importance of independence. When Bumpy Johnson died in 1968, a power vacuum opened in Harlem. Many expected chaos. Frank Lucas saw opportunity. Instead of competing for territory or fighting rivals, Lucas attacked the drug trade's biggest weakness, the supply chain. At the time, heroin passed through multiple middlemen, importers, distributors, wholesalers, each cutting the product and raising the price. Lucas decided to eliminate them all. Using contacts in Southeast Asia's Golden Triangle, one of the world's largest heroin-producing regions, Lucas claimed he established direct relations with suppliers. This allowed him to import nearly pure heroin into the United States at a fraction of the usual cost. He branded his product Blue Magic. It was stronger, cheaper, and more consistent than anything else on the street.
Harlem noticed immediately. Addiction surged, demand exploded, and Frank Lucas became rich beyond imagination. Lucas operated with a strict code. He avoided flashy displays, at least at first, and trusted only family members to handle money and drugs. His organization was small, disciplined, and insulated from informants. At his peak, Lucas claimed he was making millions of dollars per week. But the most controversial part of his story involved Vietnam. Lucas claimed that he smuggled heroin into the United States using the coffins of dead American servicemen returning from the Vietnam War. According to Lucas, corrupt military contractors helped hide drugs inside false compartments. This claim has been heavily debated. While there is evidence of heroin trafficking connected to Southeast Asia and U.S. military logistics, no definitive proof has ever confirmed Lucas's coffin smuggling method. Some investigators believe the story was exaggerated, while others believe parts of it may be true. What is not disputed is the impact. Harlem flooded with heroin. Overdoses increased. Communities were devastated, and law enforcement took notice. Lucas's success eventually drew attention from the DEA and the New York Police Department, including a rising detective named Richie Roberts. Unlike many officers at the time, Roberts focused on financial records rather than street arrests. Following the money led straight to Lucas. Ironically, Lucas's downfall began with vanity. Despite claiming to avoid flashy behavior, he was seen wearing an extremely expensive chinchilla fur coat at a boxing match, seated near celebrities and public figures. For a known Harlem resident with no legitimate income, the display raised alarms.
In 1975, law enforcement raided Lucas's properties and uncovered massive amounts of cash, drugs, and evidence linking him to international trafficking. Frank Lucas was arrested and charged with federal drug offenses. Facing decades in prison, Lucas made a decision that would permanently alter his legacy. He cooperated. Lucas provided information on corrupt police officers, politicians, and rival traffickers. His testimony exposed widespread corruption within the system, including law enforcement officials who had accepted bribes for years. In exchange, Lucas received a reduced sentence. Many viewed this as betrayal. Others saw it as survival. After serving several years in prison, Lucas was released, only to be arrested again later on unrelated drug charges. Eventually, he served his time and returned to civilian life, largely stripped of power and influence. Frank Lucas lived long enough to see his story become legend. In 2007, his life inspired the film American Gangster, starring Denzel Washington. While the movie dramatized events and elevated Lucas's myth, it brought renewed attention to his rise and fall. Lucas himself often criticized the film, claiming parts were inaccurate, yet he also benefited from the attention. Frank Lucas died in 2019 at the age of 88.
Number 5. Charles Lucky Luciano.
Born Salvatore Lucania on November 24, 1897 in Lercara Fritti, Sicily, came to New York City with his family in 1906 and grew up in the Lower East Side. His father worked in sulfur mines back home, and the family arrived poor. Luciano started crime early, mugging, shoplifting, extortion by age 10. He dropped out of school at 14, worked briefly delivering hats for $7 a week, but quit after winning $244 gambling on dice. Sent to truancy school in Brooklyn, he formed his own street gang and joined the 5 Points gang. Around World War I, he pimped women and offered protection to Jewish kids for 10 cents a week. He met Meyer Lansky when trying to extort him. Lansky fought back, earning respect, and they partnered. Luciano also linked up with Vito Genovese and Frank Costello. From 1916 to 1936, he was arrested 25 times for assault, gambling, blackmail, robbery, but never served real prison time then. He sold heroin from Montreal in the early 1920s, got caught in a 1923 sting but walked free. To rebuild his rep, he bought 200 seats for the 1923 Dempsey-Firpo fight in the Bronx. By 1925, he grossed over $12 million a year from gambling and bootlegging in New York and Philadelphia, living at the Barbizon Plaza Hotel under alias Charles Lane. Luciano worked for Joe Masseria, the old-school Sicilian boss who called himself boss of bosses. Masseria hated non-Italians, but Luciano saw profit in working with Jews and Irish. In October 1929, Luciano was abducted in Staten Island, beaten severely, stabbed multiple times with an ice pick, throat slashed, left for dead on a beach. He survived, got scars on his face and a drooping eye. That's where Lucky stuck, though some say it was from gambling wins or a mispronounced name. The attack may have come from Salvatore Maranzano or cops tied to Legs Diamond. The Castellamarese War started in 1930 between Masseria and Maranzano factions. Luciano ordered Gaetano Reina killed on February 26, 1930, after Reina switched to Maranzano, shot dead on Masseria's orders. Luciano built alliances with younger guys like Albert Anastasia, Joe Adonis, Joe Bonanno, Carlo Gambino, Joe Profaci, Tommy Gagliano, Tommy Lucchese. In May 1929, he met Lansky, Costello, Johnny Torrio in Atlantic City to plan a national syndicate. In early 1931, Luciano betrayed Masseria, agreeing with Maranzano to kill him for rackets and a lieutenant spot. On April 15, 1931, Luciano lured Masseria to Nueva Villa Tomorrow restaurant in Coney Island. They ate, played cards. Luciano went to the bathroom. Gunmen, Anastasia, Genovese, Adonis, Bugsy Siegel, rushed in, shot Masseria multiple times in the head and body. Ciro Terranova drove the getaway car, too scared to move at first. Masseria died with an ace of spades in his hand.
Maranzano I declared himself capo di tutti capi, reorganized New York into 5 families at a Wappingers Falls meeting, but he plotted against Luciano, hiring Mad Dog Cole to kill him. Tommy Lucchese warned Luciano. On September 10, 1931, Maranzano called Luciano, Genovese, Costello to his Helmsley Building office. Luciano sent Lucchese and 4 Jewish gunmen from Lansky and Siegel, disguised as tax agents. They disarmed guards, stabbed Maranzano multiple times, then shot him dead. 2 of Maranzano's men, Samuel Monaco and Louis Russo, were tortured and dumped in Newark Bay on September 13. Pittsburgh boss Joseph Siragusa was shot in his home. Los Angeles boss Joe Ardizone disappeared October 15, linked to the purge. Claims of 40 to 90 murders nationwide in the night of the Sicilian Vespers are exaggerated, only a few confirmed, but Luciano eliminated old-school bosses to modernize the mafia. Luciano took control, abolished boss of bosses, set up the commission in 1931 at a Chicago meeting to govern families, settle disputes, approve hits, prevent wars. It included New York's 5 families, Chicago Outfit, Buffalo, later Philadelphia, Detroit, with Jewish groups like Lansky and Siegel as advisors. Luciano's family ran gambling, extortion, bookmaking, loan sharking, heroin trafficking, waterfront, garbage, construction, garment district. In 1935, the commission ordered Lepke Buckhalter to kill Dutch Schultz for planning to hit prosecutor Thomas Dewey. Schultz refused, got shot in a Newark tavern October 23, 1935, died next day. Luciano expanded into prostitution in the early 1930s, running the bonding combination, a syndicate controlling brothels like chain stores. Madams paid kickbacks for protection, collectors enforced with beatings. Luciano directed from Waldorf Astoria suite, ordered crack the joint on slow payers. He met prostitutes there, partied. In 1935, Thomas Dewey became special prosecutor, raided brothels February 2, 1936, arrested 16 men, 87 women. Witnesses, madams like Florence Cokie Flo, Brown, Nancy Presser, said Luciano ran it, ordered beatings, took cuts. Phone records showed calls to gangsters. His declared income, $22,000, clashed with luxury lifestyle. Luciano fled to Hot Springs, Arkansas, arrested April 3, 1936, on 90 counts compulsory prostitution, reduced to 62. Extradited, trial May 11th, convicted June 7th, sentenced June 18 to 30 to 50 years, the longest ever for pandering. Sent to Sing Sing, then Clinton Correctional in Dannemora. Some witnesses recanted later, evidence called thin by critics, but he stayed locked up. In prison, Luciano ran his family through Genovese, who fled to Italy 1937, then Costello. He got laundry job, influenced prison church construction. During World War II, 1942, he allegedly helped Navy via Operation Underworld. Lansky arranged dock security through Anastasia to prevent sabotage, plus Sicilian contacts for the 1943 invasion. No proof of sabotage on SS Normandy, but deal existed. Dewey commuted sentence January 3, 1946 for cooperation, deported immediately. Released February 2nd, deported February 10th on freighter to Naples, arrived February 28th.
In Italy, Luciano lived in Naples, continued crime, suspected in heroin trafficking via French connection, arrested Rome July 1949, released, no charges, questioned Naples June 1951, released, passport revoked 1952, restricted to Naples 1954 to 1956 for narcotics links, weekly police reports, curfew. Met Igea Lissoni 1948, lived with her until her 1959 cancer death, had affairs, abusive arguments. Tried Cuba 1946 to 1947, hosted Havana Conference, invested casinos with Lansky, Batista, but U.S. pressure deported him February 25, 1947. In 1957, Palermo meeting helped set up drug deals. Died January 26, 1962, heart attack at Naples Airport meeting producer Martin Gosh for biopic. Buried St. John's Cemetery, Queens after U.S. allowed return. 2000 at funeral. Luciano built Modern Mafia, 5 families, national syndicate, commission on blood. He ordered Masseria, Maranzano, Reina, Schultz hits, oversaw violence in rackets, prostitution beatings, heroin trade. His empire caused countless deaths through orders and structure that lasted decades. He wasn't a street killer pulling triggers often, but the architect who made organized murder businesslike and unstoppable.
Number 6. Joel David Rifkin. Born on January 20, 1959 in East Meadow, Long Island, New York. His biological parents were unwed college students. His father was an Army veteran. He was adopted 3 weeks later by Bernard and Jean Rifkin, an upper-middle-class couple who also adopted a daughter named Jan 3 years later. The family lived comfortably in East Meadow. Rifkin was awkward from childhood, slouched with a slow gait, earning the nickname Turtle from bullies. He had dyslexia, learning disabilities, and an IQ of 128, but performed poorly in school. Classmates tormented him relentlessly from kindergarten through high school, calling him names and harassing him physically and verbally. He joined track and yearbook to fit in, but failed. He graduated from East Meadow High School in 1977 near the bottom of his class. He briefly attended Nassau Community College, SUNY Brockport, where he worked on the newspaper, and SUNY Farmingdale, but dropped out without a degree due to poor performance and obsession with prostitutes. After college, he held odd jobs, started a failed landscaping business in 1991, and lived mostly at home with his mother and sister. His father, Bernard, died by suicide on February 20, 1987, from an overdose after prostate cancer diagnosis, which Rifkin said deepened his depression. In August 1987, he was arrested in Hempstead for soliciting an undercover officer for prostitution, paid a fine, and hid it from family. He collected books and clippings on serial killers like the Green River Killer and Arthur Shawcross, who targeted prostitutes. Rifkin's murders began on February 20, 1989, with Heidi Susie Balch, age 25, a Manhattan sex worker. He picked her up, brought her to his family's East Meadow home while relatives were away, had sex, then bashed her head up to 30 times with a howitzer artillery shell casing, strangled her, and dismembered her body in the basement using an X-Acto knife like a scalpel, tools, and chainsaw. He severed fingertips and pulled teeth to prevent identification, placed her head in a paint can, and dumped it on the 7th hole of Hopewell Valley Golf Club in New Jersey, found March 5, 1989. Legs in Pequannock Creek near Jefferson Township, New Jersey, found April 8, 1989, and torso and arms in the East River near New York City. Her remains were unidentified until March 2013 via DNA and a missing person report linking her to the name Susan Spencer. She was HIV positive. About 16 months later, in 1990, he killed Julie Blackbird. He beat her with a table leg, strangled her, dismembered the body, placed parts in buckets with concrete, and dropped them into the East River and a Brooklyn canal. Her remains were never recovered. In 1991, he killed Barbara Jacobs, 31, on July 13th or 14th. Her body was found July 14th in the Hudson River, stuffed in a plastic bag inside a cardboard box.
On September 1, he killed Mary Ellen DeLuca, 22, after she complained about sex following a cocaine purchase. Her body was found October 1 in a steamer trunk in Cornwall, New York. On September 23, he strangled Yun Lee, 31, and dumped her body in the East River off Randall's Island in a steamer trunk. In late December 1991, he strangled an unidentified Jane Doe, number 6, during sex. Her remains were found May 13, 1992, in a 55-gallon oil drum in Newtown Creek, Brooklyn. On December 26, 1991, he killed Lorraine Orvieto, 28, a former cheerleader. Her body was found July 11, 1992, in a 55-gallon oil drum in Coney Island Creek. On January 2, 1992, he killed Marianne Holloman, 39. Her body was found July 9, 1992, in another oil drum in Coney Island Creek. In 1992, he killed Iris Sanchez, 25, around Mother's Day weekend in April. Her body was placed in a mattress and dumped at an illegal site near JFK Airport, found June 29, 1993. On May 25, he killed Anna Lopez, 33, a former prostitute with drug issues. Her nude body was found the next day in woods off Interstate 84 in Paterson, New York. Violet O'Neill, 21, mother of a young son, was dismembered. Parts were found over 3 days in July 1992 in the Harlem River at 123rd Street, East River at 23rd Street, and near Governor's Island, identified September 1993. Mary Catherine Williams, 31, former high school homecoming queen and cheerleader who turned to crack and prostitution after marriage failure, was killed by October 1992. Her body was found December 21 in Yorktown. Jenny Soto, 23, fought back hard, skin under her fingernails, fake nails ripped off, was killed November 16th or 17th, her body washed up in the Harlem River wearing only a t-shirt. In 1993, he killed Leah Evans, 28, mother of 2 and daughter of a civil court judge, on February 27th. Her remains were found May 9 in rural Northampton, Suffolk County, while her family hunted dandelions. Lauren Marquez, 28, mother of 2, was killed April 2. Her remains were found June 29 in Long Island Central Pine Barrens, identified August 21. His final victim was Tiffany Bresciani, 22, killed June 24, 1993. He picked her up on Allen Street in Manhattan with her pimp and boyfriend, Dave Rubenstein, a punk musician. He strangled her after sex, wrapped her decomposing body in a tarpaulin, stored it in his truck bed and garage wheelbarrow for days in summer heat, causing a rancid smell. He used Noxema to mask odors and kept souvenirs like jewelry, IDs, and clothing from victims. On June 28, 1993, at 3:15 a.m., New York State Troopers Deborah Spargerin and Sean Ruin spotted Rifkin's 1984 Mazda B2000 pickup missing its rear license plate on Southern State Parkway in East Meadow. He fled, leading a 20 to 25-minute chase before crashing into a light pole near Mineola Courthouse. Troopers smelled decay, peeled back the tarp, and found Bresciani's decomposing body. Rifkin was arrested. An X-Acto knife was found. He initially claimed blackout, but confessed to killing her, saying she was a prostitute he picked up, had sex with, and killed on his way to dump her near Republic Airport.
During interrogation, he confessed to 16 more murders, totaling 17, providing detailed accounts, maps of disposal sites, and exact locations. He described killings as events or incidents, numbered them, Bresciani as 17, and showed no emotion, referring to victims as things. He said he targeted prostitutes because they had no one, no family who cared, no one would ever come looking, and theorized his birth mother may have been one. Police recovered over 228 items from his home: victim jewelry, IDs of DeLuca and Soto, clothing, gore-stained wheelbarrow, chainsaw. Rifkin was convicted May 9, 1994 of second-degree murder and reckless endangerment for Bresciani and the chase, sentenced to 25 years to life plus 2 1/3 to 7 years. In September 1995, he pleaded guilty to murders of Leah Evans and Lauren Marquez, receiving 2 life sentences.
In December 1995, 3 more life sentences for Marianne Holloman, Lorraine Orvieto, and unidentified number 9, oil drum in Newtown Creek. In January 1996, 7th life for Jenny Soto, 8th for Iris Sanchez. Total, 9 second-degree murder convictions, 203 years to life, consecutive 25-year terms, eligible for parole in 2197 at age 238. He fired multiple lawyers, rejected pleas, and was ruled sane, though severely pathological. New York had no death penalty. He spent over 4 years in solitary at Attica, 23-hour day lockdown due to notoriety, sued unsuccessfully over conditions, then transferred to Clinton Correctional Facility, segregated from general population. Rifkin is New York's most prolific serial killer by confessed victim count at 17, all women, mostly sex workers or drug-addicted, strangled, beaten, dismembered with tools, dumped in rivers, creeks, woods, oil drums, trunks, or under mattresses across New York, New Jersey, and upstate. Bodies often festered, he stored them in garage or rented sites before disposal. Authorities believe all 17 confessions are accurate due to precise details matching evidence. He showed no remorse in early accounts, calling killing addictive like smoking, hard to stop, and said even after arrest, as much as I say I wanted to stop, there probably would have been others. At 1996 sentencing, he apologized. "You all think that I am nothing but a monster, and you are right. Part of me must be." He remains imprisoned at Clinton, isolated with no successful appeals. His case inspired media, including a 1993 Seinfeld episode where a character named Joel Rifkin prompts name change due to the Killer Association.
Number 7. Henry Hill. Born on June 11, 1943 in Manhattan, New York City, to an Irish-American father who worked as an electrician and a Sicilian immigrant mother, he grew up as one of 7 children in the tough Brownsville neighborhood of East New York, Brooklyn, a stronghold of the Lucchese crime family, one of New York's 5 families. From age 11 or 12, Hill hung around a local cab stand and pizzeria where mobsters socialized, admiring their power, expensive suits, and respect in the community. He started running errands for them, delivering messages, fetching coffee, parking cars, and soon dropped out of school to focus on the life full-time. He idolized figures like Paul Vario, a Lucchese Kappa regime who ran a crew out of a meat market and taxi stand, and Jimmy Burke, an Irish associate known as Jimmy the Gent for his hijacking skills and big tips. Hill could never become a made man because he wasn't full Italian. His father was Irish, but his charm, street smarts, and loyalty made him a trusted associate. Hill's criminal record began early. At 16 in 1959, he was arrested for trying to buy snow tires with a stolen credit card but kept quiet to protect Vario's son involved in the scheme. Police released him after a beating, shocked an Irish kid was tied to Italian mobsters. He served briefly in the U.S. Army but was discharged after a brawl and stealing a sheriff's car. Back in New York, he escalated to truck hijackings, cargo thefts at JFK Airport, extortion, arson for insurance, loan sharking, and gambling rackets. He married Karen Friedman in 1965. They had 2 children, Greg and Gina. Karen eventually got drawn into the life, hiding cash and drugs, even after threats and beatings. In November 1972, Hill and Burke were arrested in Tampa, Florida, for extorting and beating Gaspar Chacho over a gambling debt tied to union boss Casey Rosado. Convicted of extortion, both got 10 years at Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary. Hill served 4 years, paroled July 12, 1978. In prison, he ran a narcotics business, smuggling drugs with Karen's help and selling to inmates, including Pittsburgh connections.
He built a major cocaine, heroin, marijuana, and quaaludes wholesale operation post-release, defying Lucchese rules against drugs. Vario warned him repeatedly to stay out, but Hill ignored it, addicted himself and making huge money. Hill's biggest score was the Lufthansa heist on December 11, 1978 at JFK's Lufthansa cargo terminal, the largest cash robbery in U.S. history at the time. Bookmaker Martin Krugman tipped Hill that Lufthansa flew in millions in untraceable currency from Germany. Hill relayed it to Burke, who planned it with inside help from Lufthansa employee Louis Werner, who owed gambling debts, and others.
Angelo Sepe, Joe Penny, Frenchie McMahon, Paolo Licastri, and driver Parnell Stacks Edwards stormed in masked at 3 a.m., tied up guards, forced a supervisor to open the vault in 64 minutes, and stole $5 million in cash plus $875,000 in jewelry, about $28 million today. Hill provided key intel but didn't enter the terminal. Edwards botched cleanup by leaving the getaway van parked illegally. Police found it, alerting everyone. Burke, paranoid about loose ends and greedy to keep more cash, ordered hits on participants. DeSimone killed Edwards first. Burke then murdered Krugman, Sepe, McMahon, Licastri, and others like Richard Eaton, who skimmed heist money in a drug scam. Bodies vanished, dumped, burned, or buried. Only Werner was convicted initially, getting 15 years. Hill witnessed extreme violence. He helped dispose of Billy Batts Bentvina, a Gambino made man Tommy DeSimone killed in 1970 after Batts insulted Tommy's past shoeshine boy days at Henry's bar. They beat Batts with guns and boots, stabbed him, shot him, then Hill drove the body in his trunk to a spot where DeSimone dug a grave. Batts was still alive, so they finished him with a shovel and tire iron. Hill admitted witnessing around 20 murders and helping bury at least 10 bodies, but always denied pulling triggers himself, claiming he was the planner, not the killer. Burke's crew executed dozens tied to Lufthansa fallout. By April 27, 1980, Hill was arrested on narcotics trafficking charges in Brooklyn. Facing 10-plus years and knowing Burke planned to kill him, wiretaps showed threats, plus Vario's anger over drugs, Hill flipped. He signed as an informant May 27, 1980, with prosecutor Edward McDonald. His testimony convicted over 50 mobsters, including Vario, 4 years for no-show job fraud aiding Hill's parole, and Burke, life for Eaton murder, plus time for Boston College point-shaving scandal Hill exposed. Hill's info crippled parts of the Lucchese family. Hill entered witness protection with Karen and kids, relocated multiple times, but he violated rules, revealing identity, drug use, and was expelled in 1987 after a Seattle cocaine conviction. Karen divorced him in 1989, finalized 2002. Hill remarried briefly to Kelly Allure, 1990 to 1996, then engaged Lisa Caserta from 2006. He appeared on Howard Stern in documentaries like The Irish Mob, sold Henry Hill's Wise Guy spaghetti sauce, opened Wise Guy's restaurant, wrote books like The Lufthansa Heist, 2015, posthumous, and consulted on Goodfellas. In interviews, he showed no deep remorse, saying victims got what they deserved and he was doing the right thing now by profiting from his story. Hill died June 12, 2012 in Los Angeles at age 69, the day after his birthday, from heart disease complications after a long smoking history and recent heart attack. His fiancée said he went pretty peacefully for a good fella. He was cremated. Hill's life embodied the mob's allure, money, power, glamour, then its collapse, betrayal, paranoia, murder, addiction, and a mundane end as an average nobody. His cooperation dismantled associates but preserved his life. He profited from fame, while many he knew died violently or in prison.
The Lucchese crew's Lufthansa bloodbath and Hill's flip made him infamous, immortalized in Nicholas Pileggi's Wise Guy and Scorsese's Goodfellas, where Ray Liotta played him as the everyman drawn into the life he always wanted.